This episode is powered by Specialized Recruiting Group in Livonia, helping businesses find top-tier talent and professionals land their next big opportunity. Welcome to Ghosted by the Machine, the podcast where job seekers break through the algorithm and finally get heard. No filters, no bots, just real conversation about what's actually happening in today's hiring system. I'm your host, Mark Lane, and today's guest has a pretty different take on hiring and what it actually takes for companies to attract talent. James Ellis works in employer brand and talent strategy, but he's also someone who challenges a lot of the assumptions companies make about hiring. James, great to have you here from the Windy City. Welcome to Ghosted by the Machine.
Hey, Mark, how you doing? I'm thrilled to be here because to me, I think that intersection between how I talk about what makes a company interesting and how they attract people is literally the exact same thing as how I tell people to stand out in a job market so that they can get hired. It's literally the exact same advice. You just change some subjects and it's all the same.
Right. Well, I've been out of work for about a year and I'm still trying to get my face out there.
Yeah.
So you said something that really catches people's attention, that companies don't actually need an employer brand. They need to become choosable. What do you mean by that?
Okay, so we got to take like 3 steps back because that question has all these built-in assumptions. And if you're not in the weird world of recruiting and employer branding like I am, you're going, what? And you're looking to change the channel. Hold on. Give me 2 minutes to kind of get you situated and settled here. Bigger companies, AT&T, Boeing, Bank of America, Facebook, Google, whatever. There's a reason why people choose them. There's a reason why people want to work for them. And those reasons are all over the map. Now, some companies are big and famous enough that, oh yeah, I know who AT&T is. My mom knows who AT&T is. I'll work for AT&T. It's a safe place to work. How do you know that? I don't know, but AT&T has been around forever, so it must be. Okay, there's a reason to work for that company. Why work for Facebook? They like to move fast and break things. Okay, great. Who told you that? Well, I just know that. Oh, okay, that's interesting. But other companies who are less obvious and may not be brand names you think of very often, they need to hire just as many people. EY needs to hire way more people than Facebook does right now. Unless you're an accountant, do you think about working for EY? Probably not. You go, why would I pick EY? And what does EY have to do with PwC and KPMG? And aren't they all the same? Well, those companies have to figure out how to present themselves as different to the market. Why choose us over those other companies? And that ultimately boils down to an employer brand. However, big old asterisk next to that. Most of them do it really, really, really blandly, really boringly. The joke in the industry is we call it employer bland. Is that companies decide to say, well, in order to attract the most possible people, we will say the most broadly pleasant things we can. We're a great place to work. Anybody heard that lately in the last 24 seconds? Probably many, many times. We have a great culture. What the hell does that even mean? I'm assuming we're swearing. I'm Chicago. You're in Detroit. We're swearing. You say, oh, you have awards. For what? In what way? How did you get that? Did you just pay for them? What's the deal? We care about our people. How? Give me information. And of course, companies generally don't. They just figure if I say a couple platitudes, stick them on a career site, repeat them over and over and put some ad money behind it, bingo, bango, you're good. And that is not how it works. We're living in a world where, I don't know if you heard about this thing called AI. I don't know if you heard about ChatGPT and Claude and my friend's Perplexity. You can generate content for free. Not just content, gorgeous content, pretty content, polished content. You can make your career site sound like it was written by James Elroy. You can make it sound like it was written by Ernest Hemingway. You can make it sound like it was written by Brene Brown. You can make it sound like it was written by amazing authors or thinkers. It doesn't matter because ultimately they're saying the same bullshit stuff, just putting it in different packages. Candidates, and I put myself among your number, not at this moment, but in general, I have been a long time job seeker. How do you know what to choose? How do you know that this company that says these wonderful things and this other company that says these wonderful things, are they the same or are they radically different? Spoiler, they're radically different, but it's a coin flip to figure out which is the place where you're going to thrive and which is the place where you're going to scream for help on a daily basis. So I say the word employer brand has gotten a bad rep, for a reason. So let's just get to what it really is all about. Helping candidates choose. Why choose to work at that company and not at that company? What is this company offering that that company doesn't? Look, in America, every company offers basic benefits, health insurance, time off. To say, hey, you should work here, we have benefits, doesn't say anything. It's like saying, hey, you should buy this Ferrari. It's got 4 wheels. Good for you. That's not useful information. That's not the reason why anyone buys a Ferrari. I hope everyone knows that. Why work for you? Is it because you've got a compelling mission? Is it because you have an amazing reward structure? Is it because my day-to-day working experience is going to be a certain way? Make that clear. Make it easier for candidates to choose. And the more a company can become more choosable to help the candidates make an informed choice, to not make it feel like a shell game or a kind of 3-card Monty with jobs and, your livelihood, which is fair. That's a nice, safe thing to do to other people, make people feel good about themselves. Instead of doing that, make it crystal clear what you offer so that the people who want that thing go, where have you been all my life? That is what choosability is all about.
That's interesting. I worked with one of the local government companies here in Detroit area, and they were having an issue. It's a water department here in Detroit, having an issue with their messaging, and nobody wanted to pay their water bill, and things were getting broken, and just the media was all over that. Well, how do we change that? How do we change that mindset? So we went back and we spoke to the employees about working for the water company,
Yes.
and it was amazing to hear their stories, how hard they worked and how hard they worked for the residents of Detroit because
Mhm.
they lived there. And they
Yeah,
they didn't like the negative comments about the water department. So we had to build that brand from the internal conversations that we had, and we turned it into an advertising campaign. They saw their bills getting paid better, or the residents felt better about the water
absolutely.
department because they
Yeah.
heard their neighbors, their relatives speak about it. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
That's a
that
really common thing. So what
yeah,
happens very often is companies get themselves in a bit of a sticky wicket, if I might say. Let's say you're, I don't know, a big old nationally recognized pizza company who sponsors puts their ads all over football games, a time when everybody wants to eat pizza. And then it turns out your founder says some really racist stuff. Oops.
gotta
Oh
remember that,
no. What happens? Well, what's the first thing you do? You get rid of that dude and you say, meet your local franchisee, the person making your pizza. You can't be mad
right?
at these people. They're making your pizza and your pizza's delicious. And don't you love pizza? And pizza feels good. Forget the other guy. Shut up. So very odd. Wells Fargo gets caught doing all sorts of bad things for their customers. What's the first thing they do? Meet our tellers who are there and dedicated to serve you. Don't ask too many questions about how they're serving you, but that's a separate conversation. Let's not talk about the thing. Let's talk about this other conversation around the people. So very often, it's been a long time go-to move for crisis PR to say, let's stop talking about the leadership. Let's stop talking about the business entity, which is faceless and it's a big side of a building and a logo. Let's talk about the people. And it's the smart companies who start to realize, well, gosh, if we all have a reason for working here and we have that shared sense of responsibility and that shared sense of what we're trying to achieve and why we do what we do, isn't that a whole really interesting set of emotional colors we can add to our consumer messaging? So instead of talking about feeds and speeds and features and lists of things or why you should choose this company, meet the people making your product, meet the people inventing your product who care about you, who are trying to solve your problems. That is a whole emotional palette you can paint with. And I think that's very common where companies are realizing we've got resources sitting right here called our people, who we pay, by the way, every 2 weeks. We should leverage them to tell a more emotional story about why people should choose us. And it could be choose us to work here, or it could also be choose to buy here.
Right. So one thing we hear all the time from job seekers is that companies start to feel the same after a while. Same values, same culture, language, same career pages. Why do some organizations or many organizations end up sounding exactly alike when they talk about working there?
Yeah, this is a situation, and having been in those rooms when those decisions get made, and trust me, you don't want to be in those rooms. Those are not exciting rooms to be in, but they happen, and it usually happens when a company is hitting either a crisis point or a critical size where they're realizing, okay, we're not kids anymore. We're not a startup. We have to behave like adults. And so we got to put some values on things because values make us sound serious. We're not here just to grab $10 from every one of our users every month. We're here to change the universe in some broad way. And I'm old enough to remember a time, and Mark, you might be too, in the 80s and 90s when it felt like everybody had to have a mission statement. And that mission statement had to be grandiose and talk about how you're planting flags on the moon for as well. It's like you're making axles, for goodness sake. Just say you care about making axles and making safe cars and making better products, making it cheap, whatever it is. But stop with the pontification. Stop with the flowery bullshit. That's very common in companies. And the thing is, most companies kind of do one of these. They put on their blinders and they go, okay, what do we like about ourselves? Because ultimately, When the company is talking about the company, what they're really talking about is their CEO. We're saying, oh, we have values, and those values are things like, oh, we have integrity. Finally, a company with integrity. I've never heard that before. No company says that every single page. No, you're the only one. Congratulations. You invented the idea of having integrity. That's amazing. And companies, when they put those blinders on, they just go, how do we make ourselves sound good? They come up with these bullshit terms and bullshit ideas, and they call them values. Now, if you do the math and you take 4 or 5 steps back and look at most of these companies, you'll realize there's really like 12 to 15 different values. It is things like integrity. It is things like caring for your customer. It is things like moving quickly. It is things like the best idea wins. Sound familiar? Anybody listening? Go. Transparency. Oh my God. There's so many different, but they're all
you wonder who came up with these ideas. Was it a public relations firm? Was it
It wasn't. It wasn't.
HR department?
Yeah, but it's a natural expression of what are some nice things that we care about as humans? How do we express them in a corporate mindset? Which, if that sounds like total bullshit legalese, you're 1,000% right. You win the prize. But they're the same things over and over again. And we dress them up with icons next to them or different language or whatever, but it's the same things over and over again. And the company, and when I say company, I mean the CHRO, the CEO, they feel really good about themselves to say they put these things out there because that's the nice story they like to tell about themselves. And that is the biggest problem with employer branding, is that very often it gets conflated with CEO ego. That is to say, oh, we're the company that cares about people. Oh, you're the only one. See, I was thinking all these nonprofits who care about people. Not them. It's you who make doohickeys. You're the one who cares about people. Got it. You're the only one. It just makes them feel good. And they don't look around. No one makes them stick their head up and say, would you look at these 20 other companies you're competing with and notice they're saying the exact same things? And when you don't do that, you end up with the same BS over and over and over again. So very often my job is to kind of say, literally, as I do my work, the first step is give me your 10 biggest talent competitors. Let me go scrape their content. Let me scrape their last LinkedIn posts, last 100 LinkedIn posts. Let me scrape their Glassdoor scores. Let me scrape all this stuff about how they talk about themselves. And let me do some pattern recognition, because it turns out AI is really good at that. And I will show you how many companies, I did this here. I was invited to a lunch a couple weeks ago. And they gave me the guest list of who was going to be there, 20 companies. And I went, great, I'm going to scrape all their career sites and all their values pages and all their culture pages. And I say, how many people here care about integrity and say so on the career site? And every hand went up. And I said, okay, but how many of you care about innovating? And every hand went up. And I went, congratulations, you realize you're all saying the same thing? And by the way, this is Palo Alto, so you're all competing with each other for the same project managers and developers and data scientists. You all sound exactly the same. And it's not until someone kind of puts the mirror up in front of them and say, you sound like everybody else, and here's the receipts to prove it, they just keep saying the same BS over and over and over again. So very much my job is to kind of say, the things that used to work, to look nice, to sound pretty, to throw some platitudes out there, that used to work. That 15 years ago, that worked, because if you remember 15 years ago, most career sites looked like ass. They were horrible experiences. They didn't even work in mobile, for goodness sake. You're like, that's not that long ago. You're right. It wasn't that long ago. They should have worked. They were horrible experiences. So when everybody looks like crap and everyone has crappy experiences, just looking nice and saying something nice is a huge differentiator. It's a way you win. But it turns out looking good and sounding good is free. It comes standard out of the package. When you open up your new ATS, you open up your new website, boom, it looks pretty good. Like, they don't suck anymore. And if everybody looks good, what's the value in looking and sounding good? It's like, if everybody looks like, Taye Diggs and a Kardashian or Chris Helmsworth, what's the value of looking pretty? Everybody looks pretty. Turns out you got to find something else to talk about. And that's really where I live, is to figure out, what can this company talk about that other companies cannot talk about, so that a candidate can go, oh, I want that.
So James, you also said when companies can't really stand out, they end up having to buy applicants. What does that actually look like in the real world?
So let's take a fake company we all know, Bullshit Inc., right? And they have their amazing values about integrity and innovation and transparency, and they have their benefits of, we have health benefits and we let you take some time off. And they have their headline that says, this is a place where you can be your best. And they say the same stuff everybody else does. And when everybody looks the same, and you're a candidate and you're looking around and you can't even remember the logo and you can't associate to any reason why them, what do? Well, when you're on your Indeed or you're on LinkedIn or you're on whatever your job board of choice is, and you type in your company, your title or your job type, and you see 1,000 job openings. Do you click on every one? Or are there plenty you go, I don't even know about who they are? No, I'm going to ignore them. Well, congratulations. You are one of the boring companies saying the same stuff everybody else is. You've given no one a reason to click the link. So how do you get people to apply? You buy a metric ton of ads and you promote that job, put it on the job board, you put a little blue light on it, you make a little spotlight, you put it in bold text, you buy whatever it takes to stand out with money, because you could not be buggered to say something different that not every company can say. And that is the cost of, that's just the beginning of that cost, because ultimately for a company, who is on job boards all day long? People who can do the job, but have not figured out how to differentiate themselves. They haven't figured out how to package their value such that they look like the geniuses that they are. That is to say, and I apologize because I know exactly who your audience is, you sound kind of like every other candidate. And that doesn't even add in the metric tonnage of bullshit AI candidates or people who click one button and apply to 4,000 jobs, whether they're qualified or not. Recruiters are overwhelmed. Every job you've ever applied for, assume has 500 applicants. Just assume. It's a good baseline assumption. Why should a recruiter look at your resume? Why should they pick up the phone and call you when they've got 499 people who kind of, sort of sound a lot like you? And I'm on Reddit all day long on, recruiting hell and job search, rate my resumes, all that stuff. And everybody kind of looks the same. Everybody's got the same template. Everybody's got the standard career summary, which is such total horseshit. It's unbelievable. Like, you're the project manager who wants to further your career. Oh, you're the only one. I've been waiting my whole life to talk to a project manager looking to further your career. Good for you, right? You have not invented gold here. You have not, split the atom. You look like everyone else. Now, before anybody gets mad at me, and I bet people are getting mad at me, I get where this is coming from. When you don't know how you're different, you don't know what to say. And when you don't know what to say, you say what everybody else says. You say what's safe. You do what I did 30 years ago and get the book with the list of power words, and you stuff your resume with power words, which, by the way, is very much the same as building a career site and stuffing it with values. These things are perfectly parallel for the exact same reason. When you don't know what to say, when you don't know how to stand out, you end up looking like and sounding like everybody else because you just say the same stuff everybody else does. You end up optimizing and tweaking, but it's the same things.
Everybody's using AI against AI. It's my AI is competing against your AI, and
Exactly.
That's just the way it is.
And the truth is, I'm going to assume, Mark, I'm going to assume you're a freaking genius at something. I don't know what it is. We don't know each other very well, but I'm going to assume you're a freaking genius at that thing. Your resume probably doesn't reflect that, because most people are not taught how to stand out in a resume. They're not taught to talk about the value they created. They're taught to put a bunch of bullet points. Here's my career summary, which says pretty much nothing, which most recruiters have learned to kind of skip over because it says nothing. Oh, here's the last place I worked for, and here's the 5 things I did when I was there. Which, by the way, sounds like every other person. And the last place they worked, and the 5 things they did there. And last place, and it sounds and looks, and when you're a recruiter and you're faced with 500 resumes, why pick you? And what happens is a recruiter scans, and everybody says, oh, recruiters, you have to get their attention in 30 seconds. Nope. You got to get it in 6. You got to give them a reason, because what they're trying to do, when you have 500 resumes to get through, you have one job. Throw as many out as you can, because that is an insane pile. It is a pile as high as your head. There's no way you're going to find the perfect thing. So the first thing to do is throw out the garbage. Now, when you say, I'm not garbage, and you're not, Mark, you're a genius. We've established that. Don't prove yourself. You don't have anything to prove to anybody because you're a genius. But the problem is, if you look and sound like everybody else, the recruiters goes, I can't tell the difference between Mark and 400 other people who say the exact same stuff. So what does recruiter do to Mark's resume? Stick it in the no. Qualified, but no. Because there's a million of them, and I can't figure out which one of those to pick. Because in there are 3 or 4 people who stand out and are different, are saying, okay, I don't know what, it's not that you are more qualified, it's just that you're not a carbon copy of everybody else, so I'm going to call you now. Flip the script. Companies need to figure out how to say something so they're not carbon copies of every other company, so they can stand out, so people can say, I'm not going to treat you like every other company and just spam you with my resume and application. I'm going to go, oh, you're different. You care about status. You care about support. You care about this thing. I got to talk about that in my resume. I got to talk about that in my cover letter if you still do cover letters. And let's not get into cover letters. That's a fight. That is an arm wrestle, what that is. But you got to figure out how to tell your story, because the story you tell to a company that cares about, I will push my grandmother over for a nickel. And the story you tell to the company that says we support each other and we are all kumbaya because together we succeed are different stories. They have to be in order to succeed, in order to show that you fit in and add value. So if a company doesn't tell you how they're different, you don't know how to tell them you're different. And consequently, you get the standard recruiting process, which, by the way, full disclosure, no one likes. Hiring managers don't like it because they don't trust that they're getting good qualified candidates, because they're not. Recruiters don't like it because they're burnt out, overworked, and everybody hates them. And that's true. Companies don't like it because the process effectively says, none of this is predictable. I can't predict anything. This sucks. And I don't know if you know this, but apparently candidates don't like it very much. Perhaps you have some experience in that. No one likes this process. It sucks. It is total crap, but there's nothing to replace it with. So the only way to fix it is to game it by figuring out how to tell a story that only you can tell. In the same way I tell companies, you got to figure out the story that only you can tell so that everybody can meet in the middle and find their partners, so that every pot can meet the lid that fits them.
That's great. That's great insight, because I can tell you that there's some days you look at your resume, it's like, it's never going to fit this job, even though I am qualified for this job. And this is what AI is telling me to do. And this is how I have to use the AT.
Oh, here's the thing. And that is a perfect encapsulation. So if a company doesn't say how they're different and what they're looking for and how they're interesting and how they're unique, and you say, hey, AI, look at this company and tell me how to rewrite my resume to fit that, AI is going to go, you sound like everybody else. So I'm going to make you the same resume I've made everybody else. And congratulations, you look and sound like everybody else. But if the company is very clear that they care about collaboration, this is one of my clients, so this is a good example. Say collaboration. They talk about how in the biotech industry, because what they're doing is they're bringing biology and engineering together to solve new problems in ways that no one has ever done before. That means biologists have to really understand how to talk to engineers and vice versa. And that's hard. And the only way to make that happen, i.e. the only way to make the business work, is to get these two very different audiences to learn to come together, not because they're forced to, but because there is an incentive, i.e. the company grows and they get more money. You know, everybody likes that. You have to learn to collaborate. And that's an idea that the company fosters by onboarding, has a collaboration class. And very often they actually calculate how many man hours the company spends in collaboration meetings where they do postmortems and they talk about how to collaborate better. That is a company crystal clear that they care about collaboration. Now hand that to an AI and the AI is going to say, I know what story we want to tell. And it might ask you 3 or 4 questions to tell me some stories about how you collaborated, but then it's going to tell a Mark Lane collaboration story, which is going to dovetail perfectly into this company collaboration desire. And suddenly you aren't one of 500 candidates. You're one of the 10 candidates who gets it. And suddenly you're a lot closer to the top of that pile. The AI is this lens that makes it crystal clear how sounding like everybody else fails everyone. AI is desperate for you to feed it different context so it can give you a better answer. And very often you don't have better context to give it, so you get what everybody else gets and you sound like everybody else.
Yeah, because we haven't learned how to use it yet. It just got dropped on our plate. It says, hey, guess what?
Yeah, and companies haven't figured out how to tell their own story to tell the AI about how they're different. And so you're like it's like at a game show where you're like, okay, here's a pile of peas and a can of milk. Now make a 4-course meal out of that. You're like, I'm going to make the exact same meal 500 other chefs are going to make because you got milk and peas. What are you going to do with that? Right? There's no raw material from which to kind of build something interesting.
Well, this leads us into this question. This is great. From the candidate side, a lot of people feel like hiring has become really automated, which we just talked about. When someone's deciding whether to apply or accept an offer, what actually makes a company stand out?
That's a great question. That's what a company needs to do. And it really comes back to this idea of getting away from platitudes, saying nice, pleasant things, because that's easy to do. I mean, it's free. It's free to say amazing. Hell, make up an award. You're the Dingus Award winner of 2026. Congratulations. You won the Amazing Dingus Award, whatever the hell that is. Make it up. You can sound great. I can sound great. I can say that I could dunk a basketball with one hand while eating a donut with the other. I could say that. I just did. I just said that. I just made this amazing claim, which is total crap because I'm 6'1" and chubby and old. So no, I can do the donut part. That's easy. But the dunking, no, I can't do that. It's easy to make these claims. Got to get past it. You got to come out to some place where what you said is credible, verifiable, because otherwise you're just saying nice things. And that is where companies really need to get. And it's a scary place for companies to live because it means I can't say I'm everything to everyone, which is a safe thing for companies to say. It's safe for them to say platitudes. It's safe for them to say we care about our people and that we're innovative and we care about integrity and we care about authenticity and all this other stuff. It's easy to say that stuff because they do. They don't all do it. They don't all live it. They don't all spend money on it, which is how companies show that they care about a thing, by the way. They just say it because they think they're supposed to. So companies have to figure out that when they sound like everybody else, it gets real expensive because those ads don't, the price of ads are not going down. The price of job board promotions, not going down. The price of a LinkedIn recruiter seat, not going down. All those numbers keep going up for companies. Their spends keep going up. As a candidate, does the process get better for you? I don't think so. So the money keeps going out the door, but without much return for it. But when they start to figure out how to say something different, how to own something and start to prove it, they realize they don't have to spend as much money. So there's a company, actually, I don't even know where they're based. It's called Buffer. They used to be a big name in social media planning and scheduling.
Yeah.
They're not as well known anymore, but 7-8 years ago, hot stuff, really cool stuff, like in Hootsuite and Sprinkler and Sprout Social and Buffer. They're all kind of in that same kind of boat. Now it's not as common, but they've evolved. That's a company that really cares about transparency. You're like, of course, accountability, transparency, blah, 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 blah. Move your lips. I don't hear anything coming out of your mouth. Whatever, blah, blah, blah. Except for one small, teensy, tiny detail. On their career site, not locked in a PDF, not locked in their intranet, not locked in someplace you can't find. On their career site, one click away from the home, is a list of everybody who works there and their salaries. Now, tell me they're not transparent. You're not going to be able to do that. They have proven it beyond a shadow of a doubt. They have made, with one simple choice, they have made their claim so real, it is undeniable. Does anybody doubt that Facebook is all about move fast and break things? Of course not, because everything they've done since their inception has been about moving fast and breaking things, including occasional democracy, separate conversation. But they've always been about moving fast and breaking things. That's who they are. They didn't put together a focus group and say, what's a pleasant way to say that we're insane and we like to just disrupt everything? No, it was just a natural expression of who they were. It was their DNA. It's how they acted. It's how they thought. It's how they approached the world. It's who they hired. It's who they are. It is undeniable. And when a company can figure out how to say something that is undeniable, candidates go, yeah, I know about you. You're move fast and break things. Yeah, I know about you. You're all about transparency. Yeah, I know about you. You're X. No money was spent in that process. You are just known for this thing. The same way that everybody knows a Toyota car is fairly reliable. A Honda is very reliable. A Ferrari is sexy as hell. A Volvo is safe, right? All these things we just knew. Mostly they had to pay money for that stuff to make sure people associated those ideas with it. You don't have to. You can just simply be so clearly that thing that everybody goes, yeah, I know about you. You're that thing. And that's where company needs to live. And when they do that, candidates go, oh yeah, I know about that company. I don't want that, which is fine because that moves that 500 resume pile down to about 100, which is somewhat more manageable. What you want to do is say, I don't want Mark to apply for 100 jobs a day. I want Mark to apply to one job a week, but to be able to say, I know this job. I understand this company. I understand their challenges. I understand their pain points. Let me show you the value I created previously because I can also project the value I can create in your company tomorrow. Let me be very clear about the value I create and how it would fit in what you do all day. And I know this because I understand your company because of how you've communicated yourself to me. And suddenly you're not throwing stuff over the wall and feeling like it's a bunch of messages in a bottle, which let's be fair, it's how most job searching feels like. But instead it's about how do I position myself to be the obvious candidate for this company? And that's a whole different place to be.
Well, you open up a can there. So
Don't I?
Well, I'm sitting here thinking about my experiences in the last year, and it's like, God, I wish I would have met you 8, 9, 10 months ago.
An ecosystem of people who will tell you, like Reddit's my favorite because they talk, no, there's a way to do it. Let me speak bluntly as someone living in the recruiting side of the world to candidates who hate recruiters, and I get why you hate them. You're wrong, but I get where that comes from. Recruiters tell you to do a certain thing to make it easier for recruiters. But in so doing it, you made it boring. You've made it so their world is simple. Everybody is at the same level. Everybody uses the same templates, the same power words, the same formats, the same focus, the same 3 fonts. You still got a black and white resume? Why? Who's the last time anybody printed a resume? Put some color in that bad boy, man. Bring some personality to life. Bring your own expression to life. That is what recruiters will tell you. That is what resume writers will tell you, because it worked 40 years ago.
Right.
That is not what works anymore. And recruiters will tell you, no, that what James is saying is wrong, except the evidence shows that I'm right, because the recruiters will go, good, I want everybody to kind of be the same because I want to pick the best. But the one who stands out is the one who gets picked all the time. But recruiters don't see it that way. They don't think that way. They think they're making this rational decision of, I'm balancing the 500 candidates who picked and I'm stack ranking them in a certain way. And here's the top 5, blah, blah. It never happens. They put everybody in a pile called qualified, but I'm bored. And they pick the handful who go, they're qualified and they're different. I guess I got to talk to them.
And most of those that are looking through the resumes have no clue about really what they're trying to fill.
Correct.
You know, I've got 20 years experience and they've got 3 years in this job or 3 months in this job.
No. What they know is they had an intake meeting with the hiring manager who says, what I need is someone who knows this skill, this programming language, and they act like like they're order takers, like they're waitresses and waiters going, okay, do you want fries with that JavaScript skilling? What do you want? Do you want that over easy? How do you want that? And they think, and then they get mad. They get really mad when they're treated like order takers. Recruiters are in just as bad a position as candidates are. And I know no one on this podcast probably wants to hear that, but the truth is they're in just as bad a position because they've been put in a spot where they are hiring developers, project managers, QA managers, and salespeople. They can't know all 4 of those jobs very well at all. So all they're doing is being this conduit to kind of take some notes that they kind of scribbled together in the intake meeting, stick it in the job posting. They don't know what to say, so they're going to make it sound like every other job posting. And that's why you go, you all look the freaking same, and I hate it. And yes, and we all hate this process. However, if you're the expert, it is not your job to show that you're qualified. There's 500 other people who are qualified. And I think that's the message we keep telling candidates. Show how that you're qualified. And I see on Red all the time, I'm qualified. I didn't even get a phone call. It's like, you were one of 400 qualified people. Of course you didn't get a phone call. The law of big numbers says, yeah, once in a blue moon you get a phone call, but you look and sound like everybody else. Go Google your job title and the word resume and image search and see what the competition is saying. What do other resumes look like? Recruiting is a zero-sum game. If someone gets that job, you can't. So your job is not to be qualified. Your job is to be the choice that is better and different than everybody else applying for that job. That is the only way you get a job. It's the only way you get a phone call. And we've taught people to look qualified, to prove that they're qualified for that job. Don't work that way no more. You got to show you have industry experience, or you have a different point of view that creates more value, or that you know how to quantify the value you created, whether you're a developer or a project manager or a data scientist or whatever, nurse or whatever it is you're doing. You have to define the value you bring to the table, and then you have to translate it, because the recruiter doesn't know how to do this. You have to translate it into how the company sees that value. And when you do that, you get more phone calls. Now, what happens after the phone call? You're on your own there, buddy. I can't help you with that. Yeah, I'm not on the phone with you, but I can tell you how to position your resume to get better calls. It is to say, send fewer, don't tailor them. Understand how to position your value so that you are unique, that you are not one of many, you are one of one. You have a monopoly on this wonderful thing that is. And if it takes you a day or 2 or a week to figure out what that is, good. That puts you in rarefied air. And I promise you, if you do that, you will get more phone calls.
And do it in 6 seconds or less.
Well, you've got to present. That's two different parts. You've got to understand how Mark is Mark, how there's nobody like Mark. What is the thing that Mark does? And it might be where you worked. It could be a job title. It could be a company. It could be where you went to school. It could be that you know somebody. It could be that you've been in that industry for 6 years and you can actually bring them things that makes them better. That you got to figure out on your own. But then once you do that, you got to package that up so that a recruiter, poor little overwhelmed recruiter who doesn't know your job nearly as well as you do, goes, you are obviously someone I need to talk to. And you do that. Okay, this is where I'm wandering into James territory. There are many ways to do that. But my favorite is to get rid of your career summary section and just say, give me a headline as to your superpower. What is the thing that you do better than everybody else? What is the value you bring more than anybody else? And then that's what you get. That's what you want the recruiter to see in the 6 seconds. And if they go, oh yeah, I want that. Good. Now we move on to the 30-second scan. Now the rest of that resume only does one thing: prove that headline. I don't care where you went to school if it doesn't prove that headline. I don't care what your job was 3 jobs ago if it doesn't prove that headline. I don't care what you were certified in if it doesn't prove that headline. That's not what this is for. It's all about proving the headline. Your resume is a commercial for you and how you are not like everybody else. Not that you fit in, but that you are different and you should be picked. And that is a very different way of, and trust me, I get a lot of pushback from not hiring managers, but resume writers who go, that's not the right way to do it. Like, yeah, the way you did it made sense 40 years ago, not today. And if you're smart, and Mark, I suspect you're no dummy, you take the thinking and you go to your LLM and say, okay, here's the job I'm applying for. Here's what I think is interesting about that company. I've done a little brain work to say, what is this company doing? What are they different at? What are they interested at? I've looked at what they've talked about on LinkedIn. I've looked at what their job videos are about. They really seem to keep talking about this thing. Help me rewrite this idea so that it's designed to reach someone who cares about that idea. That is enough context that it will write things that, one, you would never have thought of, and two, no one else will have written either. And that's where you start to create. It is a process. I'm not saying tomorrow you're going to get 1 million phone calls, but I am saying the more you really hone at that thing that makes Mark amazing, that nobody else can do, and the more you package it and clearly, and the more you prove it, you are effectively putting a recruiter in a position where they have to call you. Or what exactly are they doing? Because you don't look like everybody else. You've shown your value to that company. You've packaged yourself. You're the only one talking about that. Of course they have to call you.
It's like an aha moment right now. You can see the wheels turning.
Yes. Good.
Let me ask you one we talk a lot about on this show. When people feel ghosted or stuck in these ATS systems, do you think that's really a technology problem, or is it something deeper in how companies think about hiring?
It's all of it. It is so, and I've seen the sausage get made. I know people who work at ATS companies. I know lots of recruiters and recruiting leaders. One, you buy an ATS, and by the way, they ain't cheap by any stretch. You buy an ATS to offload the burden of having to communicate. And when a second the company does that, they put themselves on the back foot. They put themselves in a disadvantage. The ATS automatically emails you to say that they got the resume. They automatically email you to say that they're not going forward with your order. They automatically, and of course, to their world, they're doing everything right. They are checking the box. And if you survey companies, do you ghost candidates? Not a one says, yes, we ghost candidates. And yet, if I polled your audience, we would find a very different number, wouldn't we? So it's not
Canada just signed into law the first of the year about job ghosting.
Yeah. So that's the thing. No one realizes they're the problem, but everybody's a little part of the problem. When a candidate sounds like everybody else, they're saying, please treat me and communicate with me like everybody else, which means being treated like an automated number that you're going to get sent the standard email, and you're going to wonder why you're not getting good feedback. It's because you sounded like everybody else. You've not differentiated yourself, right? Imagine a nightclub and there's 400 people all dressed to the nines. They're ready to dance. They're ready to party. They're ready to spend that bottle service money. And Mark Zuckerberg walks to the front of the line. Do you think Mark Zuckerberg walks to the back of the line? No. Mark Zuckerberg is Mark Zuckerberg, and he's got more money than God, and he's going to do whatever. He could buy that club tomorrow, and he's going to walk right in, and the bouncer's going to say, walk this way. Now, is it because Mark wore a better outfit? No. It's because Mark is Mark, and Mark is different. That is the mentality you have to bring. So if you're sick of being ghosted, you have to be unghostable. You have to be someone so different that a company has to engage you. Now, that's base level stuff. Because once you're engaged with a company, you're still going to get ghosted, and it sucks. And I'm going to tell you right now, companies don't think they're doing it. They just have offloaded the burden of having to communicate the unfortunate thanks but no thanks letter to a machine. And have you checked your spam lately? Look, and anybody who's involved in digital marketing knows that the guts of email, which we all take to be so simple and straightforward, that every email you send lands in the right place. The way emails work is a mess. And there's a huge swaths of emails that you never get just because those companies are seen as spam. And so they get dumped. They get stuffed. They never make it to your spam filter. They never get close to being sent or low. It's not the company's fault, except it absolutely is, because they've just decided to automate everything. But because they get 500 applicants for every job, They have to automate it. What choice would they have? They'd have to hire an army of people to write thanks but no thanks letters, and that's never going to happen. So yes, ghosting is 100% real. And it is this weird gap where the technology doesn't quite perfectly align to what we expect, right? Unless you actually want to be treated like a number, which of course you don't, this machine is not designed for you. It's designed for them. So your job is to take the words of Steve Martin, the one and only Steve Martin, to heart and say, be so good they can't ignore you. You got to show you are so different and so valuable that they would be absolutely insane to not treat you special, to not treat you like Mark Zuckerberg at the line of the club, to say, this person has something that nobody else has. They're offering something that nobody else has. I'm going to take them by the hand and get them through this process. Now, is there a statistical possibility you'll still get ghosted at the end of it? Yeah. Life sucks. Get a helmet. I'm sorry. It sucks for everybody. This is tough. You're never going to completely eliminate it. But most of the problem is the technology that has decided to completely remove and delete any kind of humanity from the process, unfortunately.
So I got a bonus question for you.
Excellent.
All right. A lot of companies say they can't find talent right now. When you hear that, do you think it's really a talent shortage, or is it more that companies just haven't made themselves compelling enough for people to choose them?
I think it's both of those things, yes. And to me, the insidious spoken, but just if not more true thing is, if you've worked in a big company, the process for getting a new hire is Herculean. You got to get 17 different approvals and checkboxes and forms to fill out, and everybody's got to double check and touch the thing and make sure it's okay that you're allowed to do this thing. It's insane. The fact that we hire anybody is almost an amazing impossibility. But the problem is the hiring manager doesn't know what they want. Oh, we want a developer. Great. What kind of developer? There's literally a million of them. Pick one. Well, I'll know it when I see it. And if I had $1 for every time a hiring manager says I'll know it when I see it, I wouldn't have to do podcasts, right? I'd hire you just to do stuff, right? I'd have that much money. It is just so endemic to the situation. The hiring manager, who is supposed to be the expert, the chooser, doesn't actually know, because all they know is I'm a developer. I know good code. But there's lots of people who know good code. So then how do you pick? I don't know. And you get in trouble. And so when you say, I can't find someone, what you're saying is not that I can't find qualified people. There's plenty of qualified people. What you can't find is someone who fits your vague, I'll know it when I see it mental model of what you think a good hire is supposed to look like. And of course, that doesn't happen. And so you go, I don't know who to hire, so I won't. You just can't find any good people out there. And that's the real problem. We have to make it. And this is the number of times I've gotten a job by effectively taking the hiring manager by the hand and saying, I know my world better than you know this world. Let me tell you how to hire someone great. Let me tell you who to look for. Let me tell you what qualities to look for. Let me tell you what questions to ask. Let me tell you, hey, in employer branding, there's really 4 different kinds of employer branders. There's conceptualists, there's managers, there's politicians, and there's oh, I had no idea. And the more I can educate the hiring manager, the more I'm going to get picked, because I'm showing my expertise and my value. And that is something that, because we assume that hiring managers have the answer because they get to pick, because let's be fair, they have all the power, but they don't have all the answers. So what we have to do is bring our value to the table and show them, I know you're probably looking for someone who does X and Y and Z. And I do X and Y. I don't do Z very well, but let me tell you, I do A, B, C, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, whatever. I do all this other stuff. And let me tell you the picture that paints and how that serves your world. Because by the way, I've looked at your tech stack and I see you do these things. And I'm going to guess if you do these things, your CTO right now is thinking very much about how to integrate Gemini into this tech stack. Oh yeah, it turns out, suddenly you look like a genius who understands their world. Hiring managers are not hiring the best person. They're hiring the person who immediately creates value and isn't a pain in the ass to on. And your job is to make it clear and take that hiring manager by the hand. Don't assume that you're going to get picked. You're like a Toy Story in the claw machine where all the aliens go, every candidate acts like that. And you're like, don't. Climb up the claw machine and grab it by the throttle and yank it until it falls out and you climb out. It's the only way to make it happen.
James, do you think ageism is part of some of the hiring processes?
Yeah. And I say that as a 53-year-old guy who has a baby face, so he doesn't always look like 53 years, but I is old. I is old, my friend. I remember before the internet. I went to school and college before the internet, okay? So I is old. It's there. It's just, and I know plenty of people who suffer from it and who have been victimized by it. And I don't want to say it's not a thing, because it is a thing. But there's always a thing. There's sexism, there's racism, there's skillism. I did work for a company that they only wanted to hire people from one of 20 schools because they were the top schools. And you're going, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? You're not that good a company. What? No way. But they had such high standards, they assumed everybody else would. There is isms out the wazoo. Everybody's got an ism. And I speak that as a white guy, okay? There is isms all over the place. Confront it. It's just the burden you're going to have to carry. It's the burden. Everybody's got their own. Some have 3 or 4. These are the cards you're dealt. You got to work through them. So you got to figure out as an agent, if you're worried about ageism, you got to talk about LLMs and AI like you were born into them. You got to show beyond a shadow of a doubt that because that's all hiring managers have are doubts. They're so sure they're making the wrong choice because the wrong choice is expensive. Picking someone who isn't going to work is expensive in time, in money, in energy. It's expensive. So they're terrified of making the bad choice. So you have to work twice as hard, 3 times as hard as everybody else to make it clear how you are going to be the choice that's going to make their lives easy. And in a way, we all have to learn how to become salespeople, which is a horrible thing to have to say, but that's the truth. That is what good salespeople do. They just show you, here are your options, and let me show you why this option probably is going to make your life easier. And that tends to be the choice that people make.
James, I really appreciate you being part of the conversation today. And you brought a whole different perspective to the hiring process and what's going on behind the scenes. And honestly, that's why we do the show, to connect with what companies are thinking about hiring with what candidates are actually experiencing on the other side. So if you're watching or listening and thinking, yeah, that sounds familiar, you're not alone. And if you'd like to share your story, feel free to email me or send me a DM. And if you want to stay plugged into the real stories, real insights, and real humans behind today's hiring system, make sure to follow and subscribe. We've got new episodes, shorts, conversations every week. So feel free to reach out to me. I'm Mark Lane, and this is Ghosted by the Machine, because behind every application, there's a human. So let's make hiring human again. James, again, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it.
Been a blast, Mark. Thanks so much for having me on.